One of my favorite takes from you is that I've never found humility to be correlated with success. In fact, I find it inversely correlated because it's so interesting how in today's day and age, we put up humility as a virtuous trait, but you make the argument that it's not.
Yeah, I mean, the benefit of having had some success is you get introduced to a lot of people in other fields, like famous athletes, famous DJs, famous politicians a lot. And none of them were successful or humble. Like, you may not know it sometimes from the public persona, but like definitely these people have significant confidence in what they're doing, and it's backed by reality. That's the difference. Is Joe Namath, who is a very famous quarterback for the Jets, once said, if you can do it, it ain't bragging. And basically, most of these people are kind of have that personality trait.
Do you think that the bravado came before the actual action?
That's a great question. I think sometimes yes, because people know when they're really good at something. So I once had this conversation. I was trying to explain angel investing to Derek Jeter, and he's asking me like what I do, sort of. I was trying to explain it, and I said to him, when you see a rookie in spring training, can you tell from the first at bat whether they're going to be successful? And he said yes. And I said, so how do you know? And when I asked the question, I thought it'd be like something based on swing or something technique kind of thing. And he's like, their confidence.
Wow.
And I was like, that makes so much sense, because actually the reason why someone in spring training for the Yankees back then would have confidence is they know their technique's good. Like they don't, it's like recursive to the fundamentals are sound. That's what leads to the confidence. They know their bat swing is like impressive, et cetera. So I think that you can triangulate that, but sometimes you have to get to, people are taught to suppress it. So it's not obvious. All these people, it's not obvious when you first meet them. I'm not saying it's publicly obvious, but when you meet them and get to know them well, there's definitely a lot of confidence. I made fun of my friend Kygo. He opened his act. He obviously a quite good DJ. He opened his act in Ultra last year. I think it was last year. To one of his better songs called "Stole the Show." And so afterwards, I was like, that's a pretty cocky way to start your set. And him and his manager laughed.
Yeah, because he believes he stole the show and that his presence there is the most
fine. But opening to it's a little aggressive. Yeah, that's what I was making fun of it.
So you're hanging out with Derek Jeter, Kygo. At what point did life feel different for you? Like, oh, wow, I'm in a way different room.
To be clear, it's not a daily activity. I just one of the things that's interesting to me. So I have that personal interest in sports and EDM music, so it's not accidental. But more importantly, what I've noticed is when you talk to successful people in different fields, how many common characteristics there are. And so what I'm always doing when I'm talking to people like this is asking them questions about their field and what's led them to breakthrough. Like, how did they become successful? Like, why? Why them versus other people? Can they tell which upcoming DJs are going to be successful or not? What are they looking for? And so that's what my brain is actually trying to train myself by talking to them. And it has been shocking to me over the last maybe 10 to 13 years of having the luxury to meet people who are pretty successful in different fields, how common the characteristics are. So for example, I'll give you a tangible example. One of the first times I got to hang out sort of on stage with a really good DJ in the middle of his set, I noticed that from the stage, you can actually see all the people in the audience's eyes. I always assumed to the audience that I was this anonymous figure, kind of blah, 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 blah. And so I mentioned this comment to this DJ, and he said, yeah, that's how I can tell my songs are working. I just look to see if they're staring at their friend, if they're looking at their phone, and I'll edit the I'll change the song, based upon whether people are paying attention or not. I'm just looking at their eyes. And as soon as he said that, it's like, oh my God. That's for speaking. I do a lot of public speaking stuff, with audiences, Q&A. And so the goal is to not let anybody in the audience, I should be interesting enough and provocative enough that nobody in the audience should be picking up their phone. And actually, I've given 2 presentations in the last year in the last 6 months actually, where it was really true in an audience that typically on average is pick up their phone every couple seconds. And that's how I know I was interesting, is I've actually literally taken this lesson from a club in Vegas and applied it to purely professional endeavors.
It would be so interesting to track the amount of times that someone looks at their phone while someone's giving a speech to calculate.
Truthfully, it's really, especially for an audience. So both the audiences I did this recently at, where we're both CEO audiences, and their attention span is quite limited. And if you're dry at all, or not interesting at all, or not useful at all, they're immediately grabbing a phone. Been able to pull it off twice in a row, but it really derives from like this, kind of the experience I had in Vegas, of all things.
If you enjoyed this clip, watch the full episode right over here, and don't forget to subscribe.